Okay, my name is Chelsea Grossman, and this is my response to the first Google Hangouts group discussion. I wasn't able to be a part of my group's first two meetings, so I am doing my own response to their videos and to the prompt. So the first prompt for the first meeting was about good leadership versus poor leadership, and after watching the group's videos, I made some notes, and I wrote down a couple thoughts based on what my group members said. Carla began with discussing her view of the fact that she believes that there's no born leaders, that people pick up leadership qualities throughout their lives, like being courageous and compassionate and having integrity, and it's not a matter of genetics, like having brown eyes. And then Josh went on to say that his view is similar in the way that he thinks that leaders are not born, but they're made and learned. He sees himself as a leader. He's been always a part of teams, as he's been leaders and captains of groups and teams. And he learned a lot of that from his dad, who was also the leader and captain of a lot of different things. And that is something I identified a lot with. I see myself as a leader. I'm a shift supervisor for Starbucks, and but only within the past few years have I kind of found my role as a leader and my desire to be a leader. I'm very shy outside of work and in real life, if you will. But in my job, I'm a leader at work. I'm a leader in that role, and I owe a lot of that, I believe, to my mom, who is a Starbucks store manager. And she's been with Starbucks for about 10 years now, but before that she was a stay-at-home mom and she worked at home. She never had a very standout role where she could show off her abilities as a leader. I don't think she ever even thought twice about being a leader, or if she was one. But she has excelled so far as a store manager that she's won countless awards and recognition, and continues, and she's a good amount older than her peers. So because it's kind of a young company, and so a lot of the things that I have learned to care about come from her, because I admire her very much. We're very close. I live with her now, but even before that, we were talking every day. A lot of it comes from my connection with Starbucks. I got into it because of her. I needed a job, and that's where I ended up, and found out that I am actually good at it and really enjoy it. But I don't think I would be where I am today, desiring a career in management or seeing myself in a confident leadership role in my work without my mom's guidance, her stories, her recognition, all of that. At the end of the day, we talk about the things that we dealt with throughout the day, things that she had to reprimand partners on, or things that she had problems with, things that she liked, things she applauds her team for. I kind of learned what is important to a leader through her. I could talk about my mom all day, but I am doing my interview with her, so I'll definitely be able to elaborate more there. But I definitely understand what Josh was saying about learning those things from your parent, because without her in that role, I don't think that I would be where I am today, and kind of coming to realize my future and my dreams in this leadership role field, even if it's not with Starbucks, or it'll be more than shift supervisory role. This is kind of where I'm starting out, where I'm finding this direction. And I think that without my mom's guidance, I definitely would just have that shyness and unsettled kind of vibe, maybe, if you will, all the time. It took me a few years to really find something that I'm good at, something I'm passionate about. I changed my mind a lot of times, changed my major. I got an associate's a few years ago, and I kind of just floundered around and didn't really have something that I loved. But I found organizational leadership at ASU. I found leadership and management in general, and I don't see that I would have found all that without seeing my mom. And I, on the other hand, I think that there is a kind of born with it piece to leadership. I don't know if just wanting it and seeing someone else do it is enough to be good at it. Like I learned from my mom. I subconsciously picked up on the things, but I never set out to say, I'm going to be like my mom. I'm going to do what she does. I think that there is something in me that I was born with that took me a long time to discover, but I think it was something that I was born with that makes me capable of pursuing this, or capable of realizing this, or using these characteristics that I've learned from her. I don't think, because I've transferred a lot, I've moved a lot, I've worked at several different stores under several different store managers, many managers, and most of them have been terrible, and some of them have just not cared. Some of them have maybe once upon a time been good, but they're just kind of burnt out. Some of them, I have a manager now who she was in another company management for 10, 15 years, something like that. And she may have been good, I really don't have any idea, but she's been with Starbucks management for a couple months, maybe close to a year at this point. And she's just not present, and I don't know if that means that I don't know enough about her really to say that she's not a good leader or a good manager, but I don't think she puts in the effort or the care to really fulfill that possibility. But I've also had managers that, one, he was a wreck, and he was terrible, and he was very selfish, and he was all of those things that are listed in the textbook under poor leadership. But he wanted it, and it was very strange because or at least so he acted. He wanted it so badly. He really wanted to be a good manager, wanted to do well at it, but he just was so narcissistic that his whole world revolved around his own self and wants and life, and micromanaged everything, and he couldn't think outside of himself enough to do this. So I don't know if I think I've said it out loud a lot of times that some people just don't have it, and I don't know if that's something that I've ever consciously thought about being not born with it, or if just not knowing how to use the desire. But I think I've subconsciously, at least on multiple occasions, told myself that just wanting it really badly is not enough, and I think it's a whole lot of things. I think you have to be born with it. You have to want it. You have to see from those around you. I don't think it's just one thing. I don't think I can say that there's no born leaders, but I don't think it's as simple as saying someone is a born leader. I think you could be a born leader, but you have to have the tools to use what you were born with, I guess. I like to think maybe that I was born with it, or my mom was born with it, but had we not ended up on the right path and seen what we had seen, or maybe had the motivation or worked hard to get where we are, then that leadership that we were born with would really have never been realized or used, or whatever you want to call it. I think that I just don't think that there's you can say there's one way that a leader is found. I've seen enough people and had so many conversations with my mom about this job and about leadership, and she's just been so unbelievably successful time and time again, in so many different stores, doing the same thing that she's always done. It's very by the book. that I think it has so much to do with who she is as a person, and just the way that she works, who she is, how she's built. Maybe that's not considered being born with it. I don't know. It just, in my opinion, that you have to, has to be something wired inside of you, in your brain, in your heart, whatever you want to call it, in order to utilize whatever it is that you pick up and learn from those around you throughout your life. Just think that all of those different types of factors have to work together. I don't think it's just one or the other. What Tiffany was discussing about poor leadership is about someone who pushes their own agenda, thinks about only their own self, is not compassionate, and doesn't communicate. And that describes most of the terrible managers I've had, and especially the one I mentioned that was just awful. He's been the fuel for so many papers throughout this major. He was very much about himself. And the thing was, it wasn't lacking compassion. If something was really going wrong in your life, or if you were having a terrible day, you could talk to him about it, and he would understand, or he would listen. He would be a good person to listen. I know that I had opened up to him about whatever stresses I had in my life at the time. But at the end of the day, it all came down to himself. And whatever struggles he was dealing with, he was letting that take over. And kind of whatever it was that he wanted, or what he thought about himself, that was his guiding force, if you will. Now, the manager that I have now, I would say that there's a huge lack of communication. That is a large fault of hers, is that things are written, like scribbled on the schedule that's posted, but not listed on our daily coverage reports. So, things don't jive, for lack of a better word. There's mix-ups all the time, people showing up for shifts that they were apparently taken off of, and, if people call out or don't show up, nothing is done to cover for them, so then those that are working end up being shorthanded, and there's just no conversations that should be had with partners about disciplinary type of conversations that the manager should have with a partner or not had. For example, one girl she had no call, no show. She didn't show up on Sunday, and she was in the wrong. And she was a kid. She's a high school kid, and may have not known any better, whatever the case may be. But the manager told us, the shift team, that this girl had been fired and separated, whatever, and she wasn't going to be working here anymore. She was taken off the schedule. But to us, that we thought that wasn't official. This girl's fired. In this manager's reality, she had just scribbled her name off of the schedule, and then the following week, the girl showed up for her shift and was so confused as to what was happening and why someone was there working for her. And I looked at the text messages the manager had sent, and they said something like, "We'll talk. This may not be a good fit," and it ended there. And there was no in-person conversation. There was no clear statement of, this is what you did wrong. Within Starbucks, there's a lot of paperwork to be done. You can't just fire somebody. You have to have, X, Y, and Z completed, all sorts of warnings, written warnings, or warnings before you can separate somebody. And, managers are going to do what they're going to do, but I would say at least, one sort of formal conversation should be had, but nothing was had here. Girl didn't even know she was fired. Nothing was ever said to make her believe that. Being taken off the schedule, she was just crossed off, but not changed in the system. So when she checked her schedule online from the following week, she saw her name on there still, so she showed up. It was just I felt bad. She wasn't right when she didn't show up for work, and it was on my shift, so it was very frustrating for me, but the way that it was handled was wrong. There was zero communication, and that's a huge, huge thing that can make or break a leader, a manager. I think that can make or break whether a manager is a leader or not. I don't like to use those two terms interchangeably because they're definitely not. but obviously I could talk about management and leadership and Starbucks and my mom all day long. But since this video is getting a little bit long, I'll stop now and I'll do my next discussion. But I will be continuing with the regular group YouTube Live starting this coming week on the 1st, I believe. Whichever Wednesday this is. Okay. Thank you very much.